Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here. So, sure, a lot of you have heard this already, but we got a Vanguard book. Yeah, that's right, a whole ass book. Authored by Commander Jaime. A lot of you probably already know him. He's a pretty big channel here in the community these days. And yeah, just a few days ago, he on Amazon released a book. It's only 99 cents on there, free on Kindle, stuff like that. It's kind of a cheap little thing. So he's coming around saying, hey guys, I will give some support here, right? I'm like, you know what? Why not review it, right? I mean, come on, guys. It's the Vanguard book. I had to read it and at least like give some thoughts on that, right? So let's answer the question on the thumbnail. Is this book good? The answer? Kind of good. So it depends on the reader. Let's go into it a bit. So the premise of this book and what it intends to do is it's geared towards players who want to become competitive. And the idea is it gives you a lot of tips and advice and experiences to help you become a better player. So keep that in mind. If you're someone who just likes to play for fun and casually and whatnot, immediately this book is not for you. It's not intended to be your kind of read. It's only if you're trying to, raise your game, as it were. But does it do that? Well, yes and no. See, he structures it in a very, going into the book right away, right? He structures it very organized. He goes over different topics, starting with some of the overviews and then going into different bits like preparation for tournaments, key concepts like deck building, other things such as, communicating with other competitive players and how that can help you out. There's a lot of content here. Now, horizontally speaking, it covers its bases. It definitely does. I particularly like the bits where he's going over deck building ratios and also the bits where he explains the importance of a good play group and testing with folks who are like-minded in the sense of improving their game and going to tournaments and whatnot. These are definitely good things. Other stuff feels a little bit more redundant. I'll just say it straight out. For someone who's been a veteran in the game for a bit, like myself, I haven't been around, relatively speaking, that long, but I know the game a fair bit. This book doesn't have a lot of verticality to it. The depth is not really there. It's a little bit more baseline level. So while the topics is wide, they're not too deep. But that doesn't necessarily equate to a bad book, right? After all, I still found the read fairly enjoyable. As you're going down through the sections, it became kind of clear to me really quickly that Jaime did put in some effort into this. That's the kind of thing where you look at it and say, oh, well, it's just garbage. It's just basic stuff. He only half-assed it. It's hardly anything. Everyone would know this. I've heard a lot of comments online talking about, oh, yeah, this is, just a waste of money. Hell, they've even said multi-level marketing schemes and stuff like that just to try and downplay Jaime. I don't think that's fair. I think this book is genuine, but I also feel like its value is limited and geared towards a particular player base. Let's say, for instance, that you're a new player, right? You just got in the game, you want to know how to do better, but you don't really have a lot of TCG experience, so your concept is rather limited. This is a great book. This gives you a lot of tips, and because of how organized it is as a book, it's easy to also refer back to sections as a sort of a reminder. So even those who are a bit more intermediate level can still use this in order to keep it straight, eyes on the prize, and if they need to refer back and remember, they can refresh quite easily. So it's good in that regard. But if you're already a veteran, you're not going to learn a lot of new things. As a matter of fact, there's only a couple times in the book where I was like, oh, hey, I didn't know about that. One of them being the percentage chances when it comes to mulligans and opening hands and stuff. I wasn't fully clear on that. So that is cool. And I'm like, ooh, okay, cool. That's where the stats come in. And, game theory is always a good foundational principle for TCGs. Go figure. So what about some other aspects? Well, in terms of what the concepts were introduced as, it was appropriate, right? If you're trying to talk about a competitive sense of improvement, he goes over everything. He goes over how to build your deck. He goes over mentality of a successful player. He goes over the different resources a successful player can use. He goes over tournament etiquette and what you do to prepare, and also what you do to reflect after the fact. It gives you basically everything you could ask for in terms of, oh, what are my sort of goals that I can attain to? Usually when you look at this book, it's pretty clear to see that, oh, well, this guy, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. And I will admit, Jaime does know what he's talking about. He's been to quite a few tournaments. He's interviewed a lot. And I really appreciate how he ties his own experiences. Throughout the different sections, you'll occasionally find bits where he talks about, oh, this is what I did in preparation, or hey, here's X good YouTuber here who is a good resource and they had something to say. Particularly, he likes to reference things like Solemn Vanguard, Axes, Rogue of the Seven Seas, a lot of his clique and inner circle. And that's cool. If you're a new player, it then follows that referring them to resources such as these is a pretty good way to help them move on to the next step. If you say connections are big and knowing your community and reaching out to them, then introduce them to the community. Sure, good move there. One thing I didn't like, however, on the token is it also felt a bit like an advertisement, right? He refers about the channel a lot and, oh, well, you can go and look at Axis and all sorts of stuff, but he does it to the point where it feels almost like an autobiography of sorts. And that's okay. You know, I do find that to be okay for a lot of context. I'm not saying that it's inherently bad, but it sort of goes away from the premise a little bit, right? We're reading this with the idea of trying to become better players and get sweaty with it. But then sometimes you're throwing off the topic a little bit. So even though ironically it's very organized, it also sometimes strays off course. It makes sense, you know, a bit. Jaime isn't exactly like a super experienced writer. He's usually more of a blog poster type of thing. He'll write an article here and there, but he's not really big on long drawn out novels. So to lose sight here and there and tarry on and tangents, sure, I'll forgive him for that. But it is still something I want to come out because this is a review and I wanted to be very honest with my thoughts here. Another thing to mention about this is when you're speaking on a book like this, which is one of the first of its kind for this game, not necessarily the first, but one of the first at least, we had to understand that there's not too much precedent here, so it's trying to tread a lot of ground and just scattershot topics. That's one of the reasons why there's not a lot of depth to it. And I understand it's a bit of a trailblazer, so I appreciate it for more what it is as a symbol than what it actually does in teaching. Overall, is the Vanguard book a good book? I would say yes, if you're a new player. If you're an experienced player, it's not really going to help you very much. It's really going to equate down to a sticky notes with bullet points of stuff you already know but need a reminder on. That's what it is for you as a veteran player. And aside from that, if you're a casual player, this is sort of non sequitur in the first place. It doesn't really intersect with how you play the game. It's purely for competitors. So it's quite a niche topic for an already niche game. So I don't think this book's going to appeal to a lot of people, but for what it is, it does accomplish the goal pretty well, because you would say, oh, well, Black and Death is a bad thing. But if this is for new players in the first place, it's more just ground level. It's not trying to be the complete experience all the way. It's just trying to touch the base bit by bit. So would I recommend this book to other people, and is it good? Yeah, it's pretty good. I'd say it's maybe like 7 or 8 out of 10. You know, it's not that bad. It's definitely not painfully mid. I know some people have been really wrecking on this thing and just calling it illegitimate. It's not illegitimate. It's just rather whelming at the end of the day if you're an experienced player. And because most of the people reading this are experienced players, that really twists the perspective here. So I want to be one of those guys that says, no, it's not a bad book. It's just that most people who are reviewing it, it's not a good book for them. So it's weird how this turned, right? Again, it's an impromptu video. I didn't make a script for this because I just want to throw my thoughts out there. And to that end, this turned into somewhat of a review, but also kind of somewhat of a defensible thing for Jaime's book. I know the guy and I like the guy well enough, right? You know, we're not like super duper friends and there's not really like bias here one way or another, but I just want to go on record saying that, yeah, you know, it's allowed to exist. It's not a bad book. And if you want to go ahead and read it, I don't think it would be necessarily a waste of time, especially since it is free on Kindle if you happen to have a Kindle subscription. So you could just use that as a way as getting a quick read. It's pretty small. I would say maybe give it like maybe an hour of your time or something and you'll be more or less through with it, depending on how slow you read. So it's not really that big of a time or money investment either way. It's nice, it's quick, it's succinct, it does what it does. And yeah, that's basically all I had to say. Not really much of a video, but I said I'd give a bit of a review. Overall, I'm going to give it about a 7.5 out of 10. It's pretty good at what it does, nothing too exceptional. I personally didn't glean too much from it, but I do like the idea and what it tries to do. And I think that we could try to expand the space a bit more on what Jaime did, but not necessarily just on the competitive sense, right? After all, this just gives some baseline tips there, but that's not all the players. It wasn't even nearly all the players. Heck, when he's talking about stuff like Metafy and Metafy students, which by the way, that was another thing that made it feel kind of like an advertisement in a sense and what people are hitting on. I don't blame them for that. But when you're talking about those students, it made me really sit there and think, yeah, you know, this would be for students like Metafy students, except they're really small as a group. So even though it is for the community, it's not for much of the community. It's rather narrow in its appeal. So if we were to try and make a book in the future, maybe a broader appeal kind of book would do better here. I want to see something like that. I'm not sure who would exactly take up the mantle. Maybe Jaime himself would take another crack at being an author at this kind of thing, but I mean, hell, I would read it. But maybe someone else could try it in the future. It depends. I mean, the game isn't exactly in the best spot right now. It seems like it could be in the up and up, or it could be crashing. We're in a bit of a tumultuous time, so that may never come. But I kind of encourage that someone at least tries, you know? It's probably not going to be me. I'll be flat out about it and honest. But, you know, why would it be me? There's a lot of other better, more qualified people out here in the community who are more knowledgeable and probably just better communicators at the end of the day. You know, they let them take up that mantle there. I'm just a kind of a small guy who likes the game, you know? So yeah, that ends my review. If you guys did like this video, I've got a lot of other discussion videos and other kinds of content down on my channel below. And if you like what you see, do leave a subscribe and turn on that notification bell for the next time that I upload a video. And with that, take care. God bless.